Mansa Musa, the untold story of the richest man in human history. Imagine a man so wealthy that modern economists struggle to calculate the true value of his fortune. Imagine a king whose journey across continents was so extravagant that entire economies were affected by the amount of gold he spent. Imagine a ruler whose name became legendary from Africa to the Middle East and eventually reached Europe, inspiring explorers, traders, and historians for centuries. This is not fiction. This is the story of Mansa Musa, the emperor of the Mali Empire, widely regarded as the richest individual who has ever lived. More than 700 years after his death, his name continues to fascinate historians, economists, archaeologists, and scholars around the world. While many kings accumulated wealth through conquest, taxation, and trade, Mansa Musa controlled one of the most valuable resources in medieval history: gold. At a time when gold was the foundation of international trade, Musa ruled over territories that produced an enormous portion of the world's supply. However, his story is about much more than wealth. Mansa Musa transformed cities into centers of learning, encouraged education, funded architecture, promoted religion, and helped place West Africa on the map of the medieval world. To understand how he became the richest man in history, we must first travel back to a world very different from our own. A world of deserts, caravans, merchants, kingdoms, and empires. A world where gold was more valuable than almost anything else. And at the center of that world stood a remarkable ruler named Mansa Musa. Long before Mansa Musa was born, West Africa was home to powerful kingdoms that controlled important trade routes across the Sahara Desert. The Sahara was not merely a vast desert, it was a highway connecting two worlds. To the north lay North Africa and the Mediterranean. To the south were the rich kingdoms of West Africa. Merchants traveled thousands of miles carrying goods such as salt, gold, ivory, textiles, copper, and spices. One of the most important commodities was gold. Gold from West Africa supplied markets throughout the Islamic world and Europe. Among the kingdoms that benefited from this trade was the Mali Empire. The empire was founded during the early 13th century by Sundiata Keita, a legendary ruler often called the Lion King of Mali. According to historical traditions, Sundiata united various tribes and established a powerful state that quickly expanded. Under his leadership, Mali gained control over strategic trade routes and valuable natural resources. By the time of Mansa Musa's birth, Mali had already become one of the most influential empires in Africa. Its wealth came from agriculture, trade, taxation, and especially gold. The empire stretched across vast territories that today include parts of Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Mauritania, Niger, Burkina Faso, and neighboring regions. Cities flourished, markets thrived, caravans crossed the desert carrying treasures worth fortunes. The foundation for extraordinary wealth had already been laid. What Mali needed was a ruler capable of taking the empire to even greater heights. That ruler would be Mansa Musa. Historians believe Mansa Musa was born around 1280. His full name was Musa Keita. He belonged to the famous Keita dynasty, the royal family that ruled Mali. The word Mansa means king or emperor. Thus, Mansa Musa literally means King Musa. Although records from medieval Africa are limited compared to those of Europe or the Middle East, historians agree that Musa was highly educated, intelligent, deeply religious, and politically skilled. Unlike many rulers who inherited unstable kingdoms, Musa grew up within one of the most prosperous states in the world. From a young age, he learned about governance, trade, diplomacy, religion, and military affairs. He observed merchants arriving from distant lands. He watched caravans transport gold across the Sahara. He understood the importance of controlling trade routes. Most importantly, he learned how wealth could be transformed into power. Yet Musa did not initially expect to become emperor. History would place him on the throne through an unusual series of events. One of the most fascinating stories in African history concerns how Musa became ruler. According to historical accounts, Mali's previous emperor became obsessed with discovering what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. At the time, many people wondered what existed beyond the western horizon. The emperor organized a massive naval expedition. Hundreds of ships were reportedly sent into the Atlantic. Only one vessel returned. Its sailors described powerful currents carrying ships into the open ocean. Most rulers would have abandoned the idea, but the emperor remained determined. He launched an even larger expedition and personally joined it. This time, none of the ships returned. The emperor vanished forever. His fate remains one of history's great mysteries. Did he drown? Did he discover unknown lands? Did he reach distant shores? No one knows. Before departing, however, he appointed Musa as deputy ruler. When the emperor never returned, Musa ascended the throne around 1312. The destiny of Mali changed forever. After becoming emperor, Musa focused on strengthening Mali. He expanded the empire through military campaigns and diplomacy. Important cities came under his control. Trade routes were secured. Regional leaders pledged loyalty to the empire. One of Musa's greatest strengths was administration. He understood that wealth alone was not enough. An empire required organization. Governors were appointed to oversee provinces. Taxes were collected efficiently. Trade was protected. Justice systems were strengthened. As Mali expanded, so did its influence. Travelers from North Africa and the Middle East began hearing stories about a wealthy African kingdom ruled by a powerful king. Yet the outside world still knew little about Mali. That would soon change dramatically. One journey would make Mansa Musa famous across continents. A journey that historians still discuss 7 centuries later. Before understanding the famous pilgrimage, we must understand where Musa's wealth originated. Many people assume he simply inherited mountains of gold. The reality was more complex. Mali controlled some of the richest gold-producing regions on Earth. At the time, West Africa may have supplied a significant share of the world's gold. Gold mines generated enormous wealth. But gold alone did not make Musa rich. The empire also controlled trade. Merchants crossing the Sahara paid taxes. Goods entering and leaving the empire generated revenue. Salt, often called white gold, was particularly valuable. In hot climates, salt was essential for survival. Some regions valued salt almost as highly as actual gold. Mali occupied a strategic position between gold-producing regions and international markets. Every caravan represented economic opportunity. Every trade route generated income. Every merchant contributed to imperial wealth. Through careful management, Musa transformed these advantages into unprecedented prosperity. By the early 14th century, Mali had become one of the wealthiest states in the world. Its emperor possessed resources beyond imagination. Soon he would reveal that wealth to the entire world, and the world would never forget it.